So my name is Heather Cunningham. I grew up in Manchester, New Hampshire, which is about an hour north of Boston, and I work as the construction repair coordinator at the Greater Albuquerque Habitat for Humanity here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So, working at a nonprofit, we definitely wear a lot of hats. As a construction repair coordinator, I am responsible for schedule and property assessments with potential homeowners who may need assistance in Albuquerque. The entire application process, scheduling the repair itself, coordinating supplies and materials that are needed to do the repair, working with subcontractors, and then all of the close-in documentation that's associated with the project. So, right now, I spend about 6 hours a day on the job site itself. So, my day starts pretty early, typically around 6:30 in the morning, because we are in the high desert. We kind of work around the sun. And then at the end of the day, if I have any property assessments, I try to schedule them in the early afternoon following lunch. And then about an hour and a half to 2 hours of that is returning phone calls, emails, documenting what happened on the job site, what needs to be done, and then just filing away paperwork. My career path, I always tell people that I took the scenic route. During high school, I attended a skill center, which allows you to leave the high school for a few hours a day and attend classes that focus on more specific career paths. So I completed a 2-year certificate program there for design communication, which specialized in architecture, graphic design, interior design, civil engineering, and landscape architecture. So my original plan was to become an architect. So after graduation, I attended a technical college in New Hampshire, which is where I'm from, where I got my associates in architectural engineering, which focused on structures. And then I moved to Georgia, where I attended the Savannah College of Art and Design for my bachelor's in architecture. After that, I moved back to New Hampshire and did a Master of Architecture from the Boston Architectural College. And in order to become an architect in the United States, you have to complete over 5,000 hours working under a licensed professional to be eligible to sit for your exams. So after graduation, I worked 5 years in a residential architecture firm designing houses and construction plans for builders in the Northeast. But one of the biggest issues I had was being a young woman in construction industry is really hard. I decided I needed to get construction experience if I was going to dedicate my life to work in this industry. So unfortunately, it's kind of hard to get construction experience or any experience in general without experience. So nobody was really willing to let me build a house with any experience. So I decided to apply for AmeriCorps. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with AmeriCorps, but it's very similar to the Peace Corps, except the Peace Corps focuses on serving communities globally, whereas AmeriCorps focuses on serving communities here in the United States. So I applied for a service year with Santa Fe Habitat for Humanity, where I ended up serving 2 years, building over 12 new homes. So it was a lot of cutting edge stuff, focused on solar, sustainability, and achieving net zero affordable housing. So after I finished my 2 years there, I realized I really liked being out on the job site. I really liked serving the community and being outside all day working with volunteers. So following those 2 years in the middle of the pandemic, I was working as a GED instructor. So I did that for about 6 months, and I was just really bored being in front of a computer. I couldn't really go back to being in the computer mindset. So I reached out to my old boss up in Santa Fe, and he said that if I was interested in volunteering, UNM needed some assistance with their EcoMod project. So I started coming out on the weekends and just helping them build this modular home because I had the background in architecture. I had the background working with Habitat for Humanity. And so I started doing that. And that's where I actually met Bill, my boss here in Albuquerque. So it was definitely a long process to get here. So the one that I always like to use as an example, because we do work a lot with high school students, we do have a lot of partnerships with the high schools here in Albuquerque, is geometry and algebra. Because I remember in high school, students were always asking, when am I ever going to use this? And I can honestly tell you, I use geometry and algebra all the time, specifically the Pythagorean theorem, which is funny because I was convinced I was never going to use that before. But on the job site, we call it the 3-4-5 rule. And we use the Pythagorean theorem for squaring off corners of a building, making sure that the house is going to be straight. And then all the angles, triangles, areas, just linear footage for ordering materials every week. So geometry and algebra definitely have come in handy. I would definitely encourage students to learn a second language. Growing up in New Hampshire, there wasn't a huge emphasis on second languages. So I did take a couple of years of Spanish while I was in school. But as you get older, it's definitely a lot harder to learn a language. And not even just the language itself, but just finding the time to really study and learn a second language. And I don't think it matters what career you really go into in life, where communication is always at the root of everything you do. And I feel like the more people you communicate with, the more successful you'll be.